The Fort Erie Podcast with Brent Jones. Brent Jones starts now.
Hey, that's me. I'm Brent Jones. Hello and welcome. This is episode 65 of the Fort Erie Podcast. If there are any parents listening, this might be a very exciting time of year for you. I don't know, but back to school is just around the corner. I have a funny feeling we have some excited parents around town and probably some disappointed kids, but I have a list pulled up in front of me here of all the various supplies you're supposed to purchase and send your kids back to school with. I find some of the items on this list a bit strange, if I'm being quite honest. I'll review the list with you later in today's episode, so stay tuned for that. The big news that I wanted to kick off today's episode with is regarding the Fort Erie Observer. That's the paper that gets delivered via Canada Post right to your mailbox bi-weekly. Last week's new edition of the Fort Erie Observer had a full-page feature about this show, about the Fort Erie podcast. Now, I knew that there was going to be a feature done on this show. I knew that was coming, but I didn't realize the Observer was going to dedicate like a full page, like do a full feature on the Fort Erie podcast. So big thanks to Jen Wilkinson and Christine Whelan for making that happen. I really appreciate it. The tagline for that full-page feature was "A little something for everyone," and that's going to be the theme of today's episode, because I have a funny feeling that, thanks in no small part to that full-page feature, that we've got some new listeners, new people checking out the Fort Erie podcast for the first time. Maybe this is the second episode that they're ever hearing. So what I've done, I'm doing something a little bit different for today. I do not have a guest that I'm going to interview. I won't have anybody joining me later. What I'm doing instead today is what I'm calling a marathon episode. Those of you who've listened to the Fort Erie podcast for a while know that every episode is a little different. There's sort of different recurring features, segments, bits that I do, things like this month in Fort Erie history, Fort Erie questions and answers, Fort Erie trivia, what's making news in Fort Erie, upcoming community events, Fort Erie job leads, all of that. I could keep going down the list, but you get the idea. Every episode is a little different. Some contain this feature, some contain that feature. Well, for today's episode, this marathon episode, I'm going to do all of them. And it's a lot of work. It's more work than it probably sounds. But for the benefit of new listeners, I thought, let's make sure there's a little something for everyone in today's brand new episode. So let's get right into it and talk about what's making news in Fort Erie.
News on the Fort Erie Podcast.
Well, this first story might as well be an Onion headline. It's like one of those truth is stranger than fiction type stories, because a 22-year-old truck driver from Scarborough has been charged after trying to take $2.5 million worth of marijuana across the border. He crossed the Peace Bridge from Fort Erie to Buffalo, claiming that he was carrying Eggo waffles, a trailer full of Eggo waffles. That was his story. Headed to Georgia, carrying waffles. If I were going to try to smuggle something over the border, and I never would, but if I were going to, I can't imagine using waffles as my cover story. Yeah, officer, I'm headed to Georgia for the weekend. I've got a trunk full of waffles. Nothing to see here. If this dude is convicted, he faces a minimum of 5 years in jail, a minimum, and up to a $5 million fine. Wow. An orthopedic surgeon based in Amherst, New York, he's suing his 91-year-old mother and his sister over a 3-bedroom Crystal Beach property that's been in their family for over 50 years, allegedly worth over $1 million. This doctor, Dr. Christopher Hamill, he and his family were cut out of the family will after some various family drama. This is another, just one of these strange stories. We'll see how all this plays out in the courts. If you happen to notice that your power went out on the weekend, that was intentional. Canadian Niagara Power performed a planned outage this past Sunday at 2 o'clock in the morning. That time was used to reconfigure the system supply, whatever that means. There is another planned outage coming up in 6 weeks. That's on Sunday, October 1st, if you want to add it to your calendars. Same time, 2 o'clock in the morning. Fort Erie Public Library has announced a brand new book club they're calling the Grim Reader. This is dedicated to thrillers, true crime, mysteries, those types of stories. The Grim Readers will be meeting the first Tuesday of every month at 11 o'clock a.m. at the Crystal Ridge branch. This starts in September. Everyone is welcome, but you have to secure a spot. You can call 905-871-2546 to secure yours. There is a new trades program in town. You may have heard there was a ribbon cutting ceremony last week for the official opening of Sheridan at Canadian College of Technology and Trade, CCTT. It offers a few different 2-year diploma programs, including mechanical technician, computer numerical control and precision machining, as well as welding and fabrication technician. So these programs are available through Sheridan at Fort Erie International Academy, FIA, on Tate Avenue. Kind of cool to have the trades coming to town. Town Councillor Anne-Marie Noyce says there's concern about fence heights along parts of Black Creek. The exact quote is that from Anne-Marie Noyce, she's suggesting 3-foot limits so not to disturb neighbors who have, quote, paid for the river view. Yeah, so if you've bought a house on Black Creek, apparently you have some entitlement to your neighbor not putting up a fence. Anyway, council, will be looking into its bylaw concerning the height of fences, not just along Black Creek, but also Lake Erie, all bodies of water in town.
Fort Erie job leads.
If you're on the hunt for a new job, Fort Erie, hopefully one of these leads will point you in the right direction. Buongiorno Bakery on Garrison Road, they're hiring a full-time employee. The hours are 8 to 5, Tuesday through Saturday. You can apply by dropping off your resume in person at 427 Garrison Road. Border City Castings is looking for a general laborer. If that sounds like that would be something that suits you, send your resume to B as in Bravo, bcity@bellnet.ca. Green Acres Family Restaurant, they're hiring a part-time server. Again, you can apply by email. Send your resume to greenacresrestaurant@gmail.com. Bridgewater Golf and Country Club is looking for a line cook. The hours are flexible, full-time or part-time, $18 an hour. Send your resume to Chef Wayne at bccgolf.ca. The Ridgeway Lions Senior Citizens Complex, that's the 40-unit seniors apartment building in Ridgeway. They're looking for a part-time cleaner. It's just 3 hours per shift and 3 days a week, so 9 hours by my math. But if you're looking for something flexible, something on the side maybe, email ridgewood@bellnet.ca. Fleet Canada is looking to hire different types of technicians, fabrication, assembly, and bond technicians. These positions are full-time and permanent. You can apply on the website Indeed. And these positions, Fleet Canada is also offering benefits and paid time off, so not too shabby. The Boys and Girls Club of Niagara is looking for a before and after school satellite program supervisor. This is at the St. George Child Care Center in Crystal Beach. This is a full-time position, Monday to Friday, $21 an hour, some benefits, but experience in education and early childhood education is a requirement. And then lastly, Peters Excavating in Stevensville, they're looking for a vehicle detailer/cleaner. The schedule is flexible, but you do have to be available to work on weekends, and pay is $20 per hour.
Fun and games on the Fort Erie Podcast.
All right, it's time for another epic round of Fort Erie trivia. I've got 2 live callers on the phone. Both are named Mike, but we're not going to let that ruin our day. So let's start with, we already decided one of you is going to be Mike, one of you is going to be Michael. So let's start with you, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me, Brent.
Yeah, man. I wish you good luck. You consider yourself a pretty clever fella?
I don't. No.
We'll find out if listeners do, I guess.
We'll find out.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then on the other line, I've got Michael. How are you today, sir?
Good. How are you?
Great, man. Great. You're from Fort Erie? You're from the area?
Since 2006. Yeah.
That's plenty of time to learn some stuff about the area. So, gentlemen, here's how this is going to work. You're going to take turns answering trivia questions about Fort Erie. And whenever I say Fort Erie, I'm referring to the entire town, which includes Ridgeway, Crystal Beach, and Stevensville. Nobody can help you answer these questions. There's no Googling, no cheating, no taking hours to respond. You got to think fast. You got to do this on your own. And I get the final say on whether your answer is right or wrong. Whoever gets to 3 correct answers first after an equal number of turns is the winner. And the prize you're competing for is $50 to Green Acres Family Restaurant. So, Mike, you understand the rules?
Absolutely.
Okay, you're going to kick us off with the first question. Good luck, sir. Here we go. Mike, how much is a Bay Beach day pass if purchased on Saturday?
Oh, wow. I've never bought one, but I'm going to guess it's probably $10.
It is $10. You are exactly right, sir. Mike is on the board. Michael, over to you. What juice is most often associated with the Crystal Beach amusement park?
Loganberry.
You got that exactly right. You're on fire right out of the gate. We got a point on the board for both of you. Mike, what is the name of the Fort Erie Town Councilor for Ward 1?
Anne-Marie Noyce. No, she's like 6.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ward 1 is George McDermott.
Yeah.
Michael, on to you. How much does parking cost at the Fort Erie racetrack?
Free?
It is free. You are exactly right. Michael's got 2 points. Mike, we got to get you to catch up. What organization now operates the building formerly known as the YMCA?
That's the Boys and Girls Club.
That is exactly right. Boys and Girls Club of Niagara. So you are both tied at 2. We might end up having to go to sudden death here. We'll see. But Michael, if you get this one correct, you are technically the winner because you will have had an equal number of turns. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. What restaurant used to be at Garrison and Central before its demolition?
Keystone Kelly's.
Keystone Kelly's? I will accept that, sir. That is the correct answer. Congratulations, Michael. You are the winner. Then this might be the fastest round of Fort Erie trivia I think I have ever played. Mike, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Brent. It was a pleasure.
Hey, you were a great sport and you gave a great performance. Michael, stay on the line here because I'm going to tell you how you can claim your prize. And for everybody listening, this was, of course, the first of 3 Green Acres gift cards that I'm giving away for the month of August, part of my Green Acres 50-50-50 giveaway. We'll recap later in this episode how you can win the other 2, but this one is gone. It's off the table. If you want to play in an upcoming round of Fort Erie trivia, you want a shot to win a gift card or some other type of prize, hey, let me know. Leave a message on the Byrd Box, 289-599-2973. Leave a message. Let me know that you want to play.
The Fort Erie Podcast.
I'm sorry, guys. I was practically eating the microphone at the end of Fort Erie trivia. I'm not a really technical guy, but I think that the style of microphone I use, I think it's what's called a condenser mic, where it picks up all kinds of noise. If you get too close to it or shout into it, the audio will kind of break up. And that's basically what happened during trivia. I was practically shouting at the end. What can I say? I get excited about trivia. Had my mouth right on the microphone, so some of the audio broke up there a bit. Hope you enjoyed listening to Fort Erie trivia anyway. Now, I did say that I would recap my August Green Acres 50-50-50 giveaway, so let's do that right now. You just heard Michael win one of those $50 gift cards. There's still 2 more to go. One way you can win is visit theforteriepodcast.com. Click the giveaway link at the top of the page. It'll ask you to enter your first name and email. Do that. I'll be drawing one lucky winner at the start of September to take home another one of those gift cards. And then the other way is to call the Byrd Box. Everyone who leaves a message on the Byrd Box in the month of August will go into a draw for the final Green Acres gift card, draw being the first week of September. Call the Byrd Box at 289-599-2973. Squawk about anything you want, and you'll have a shot to win $50 to Green Acres. Anyway, let's let the marathon episode continue. I've got a real estate feature to share with you right now.
Fort Erie Real Estate with Brent Jones, your friendly local realtor with RE/MAX Niagara Realty.
For today's marathon episode, I'm going to keep the real estate feature fairly short. I just want to touch on the town's short-term rental bylaw and sort of what's involved with obtaining a short-term rental license. Basically, it starts with going to forterie.ca, completing the application form. And yes, you do need a short-term rental license if you're going to operate a short-term rental. Don't be that guy or gal on your street who thinks you're going to operate, an Airbnb and your neighbors aren't going to notice. They are going to notice, and they are going to contact bylaw. And as I'm going to share with you in a moment, the fees are hefty. You do not want to get fined for operating a short-term rental in this town without a license. Now, if you didn't know, the town issues a maximum of 250 short-term rental licenses every year. Folks who already have one from the previous year, they get first dibs on being able to re-up their license for the following year, and then any of the license stock that's still available goes up for grabs after that. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a lawyer, I'm not a paralegal, I am not qualified in any respect to give legal advice. As a matter of fact, if you want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, you should probably contact the town's bylaw enforcement, which you can reach at 905-871-1600, extension 5216. But my understanding is this: if you are operating a short-term rental, kind of like a hotel, an Airbnb, a Vrbo, something where people are going to stay for a week, 2 weeks, a weekend, something like that, yeah, you have to have a license. If you own your principal residence and you're going to Florida for 6 months and you think, hey, that'd be cool just to rent my place out for 6 months while I'm away, my understanding is that you do not require a short-term rental license for that. A short-term rental license is when you are renting it out for periods less than 30 days. Okay, but here are the rules. You're going to go to forterie.ca. You're going to complete the application form to apply for your short-term rental license. But a few things you need to know. The property you're going to use as a short-term rental can only have a maximum of 3 bedrooms. Now, if you go, well, my house has got 4 bedrooms, does that make it ineligible? You can still rent it out, but you have to lock up, seal off, close off that 4th bedroom. Common question that people ask is they go, well, can I take that 4th bedroom and turn it into a gym or an office space, use it for something else? The short answer from the town is no, you cannot have a 4th bedroom. It's got to be closed off. So maximum of 3 bedrooms in your short-term rental. And if you have 3 bedrooms, you can have 8 guests there at a time. If there are 2 bedrooms, you can have a maximum of 6 guests. And if you have just a 1-bedroom property, the maximum number of guests that can stay there is 4. Your property is subject to an annual fire inspection. And if the people visiting your property, if your guests have visitors that come to visit them while they're in town, their guests must be gone by 11 o'clock every day. Now, I said the fines are steep. If you do apply, you pass the fire inspection, all that, you get your short-term rental license, you pay all the fees associated with that. Well, if you, for instance, start advertising, say you unlock that 4th bedroom that you sealed up, you start advertising that you have more than 3 bedrooms, that is a $500 administrative penalty. It also goes on your record. You get some demerit points, which will count against you next time you apply for a short-term rental license. If you advertise that your property, say, can host 10 or 12 people instead of the maximum of 8, that's another $500 administrative penalty, more demerit points. If you decide just to go ahead and operate a short-term rental without having a license and the town finds out, and they will, by the way, they absolutely will find out, those fees, based on the fee schedule I'm looking at here, start at $1,000 per infraction, go up to $2,000. It's hefty, okay? Why does any of this matter? Why am I telling you about short-term rental licenses in the real estate feature? Well, it matters because these bylaws are enforced in the town of Fort Erie. And there are a lot of folks, especially during recent years, where borrowing money was relatively cheap. There were a lot of amateur investors that cropped up. Everybody thought, hey, I'm going to get that property in Crystal Beach or whatever, rent it out. I'm going to make a boatload of cash on Airbnb. And unfortunately, especially when buyers come into our town and they're working with agents who are not familiar with our town, say Toronto agents or based elsewhere out of the GTA, they don't know our local bylaws. So they, I know of, and I'm trying to be careful not to disclose specific details, but I know of investors, amateur investors, who have come into our town buying a property that they think they're going to use as a short-term rental. They're unable to get a license for whatever reason, or they aren't even aware they need to get a license and they get slapped with all these fines. Okay. It could be a great investment to buy a property to use as a short-term rental. Certainly when you get down into the Crystal Beach area, there's not a whole lot of options for hotels, for lodging. So there is a need for it, I would say, to some extent for our local community, but it's important that you do understand the rules if you want to go down this path.
It's Fort Erie's answering machine, the Byrd Box.
Welcome to the Byrd Box. This is Fort Erie's answering machine. At least that's what I like to call it. You can call in 24 hours a day. You can squawk about anything you like, and I'll play those messages right here on the Fort Erie podcast. Now, in previous episodes, I've suggested that I was pretty sure nobody who listens to the Fort Erie podcast lives outside of Fort Erie. I assume that if you regularly listen to the show, surely you must live here in this town. But it turns out that assumption I made is false. I actually, as it turns out, this show does have some listeners outside of the town of Fort Erie. A few of them called in to let me know, to set me straight. Let's start with this first caller in St. Catharines.
I live in St. Catharines, and I am a big fan of your weekly podcast. I enjoy listening and learning about the history, businesses, and the people of the Fort Erie area. Keep up the great work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's a nice message. Just to clarify the point about this being a weekly show, that is generally true. I aim to have a new episode released every Tuesday morning, but that is not always the case. For example, next week, there won't be a new episode. I'm sorry, but episode 66 will be available early into September. The best way to find out if there's a new episode of the Fort Erie podcast is to subscribe using one of the popular podcast players like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, even YouTube will give you a notification when a new episode comes out. And then this next caller is from all the way down the road in Chippewa.
I wanted to say hi and thank you for your show. I've just listened to a couple of your shows. So I'm looking forward to meeting you. I'm a missionary, an entrepreneur out of Chippewa. We're all about local entrepreneurship like you. And I really like your values so far and enjoying listening to your program. And we'll meet soon.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. Hey, 2 nice messages in a row. How about that? That might be a new record. Hey, man, I appreciate your kind words. I really do. Although I got to say, you mentioned twice that we were going to meet soon. And you seemed very confident when you said it. Like, I don't know if maybe you know something that I don't, but who knows? Maybe we'll bump into each other in public. I find that's happening increasingly so these days, is that people around town are recognizing me more for doing this podcast than they are for real estate. And I'm not sure how to feel about that, because the Fort Erie podcast was always sort of a secondary project to my career in real estate. But for instance, I was paying at the beer store the other day, and the guy at the counter was like, "You're the guy who does the podcast, right?" I'm like, yeah. I guess he recognized me by face. But then another time I went in the dollar store, and the lady working in there didn't recognize me by appearance, but recognized me by voice. She goes, "Oh, hey, you're Brent Jones. You do that Fort Erie podcast." So I don't know how to feel about that. It's like I'm getting more recognition for the podcast than I am for selling real estate, but who knows? Anyway, sir, hopefully we will in fact bump into each other one day soon. And then this last caller is from Port Colborne, and I can't fully tell if she's joking or not. Have a listen.
Wondering why there is no mention of any of the events that happen in Port Colborne. I was really hoping there would be some stuff about Port Colborne on the Fort Erie podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say in response to that. I'm not fully sure if you're joking. Look, I love Port. Matter of fact, if I wasn't living in the town of Fort Erie, that would probably be my second choice. I'd think I'd be quite happy living in Port Colborne as well. Love that area, but unfortunately, this is the Fort Erie podcast, so no, there's not a whole lot of content related to Port Colborne. But hey, you, dear caller, you are welcome to start your own podcast. You could start the Port Colborne podcast. Why not? Or if you want a realtor out that way to do it, maybe maybe ask Carly Smith or Nikki Lumsden. Maybe one of them would do a Port Colborne podcast. I'm not totally sure. Anyway, a couple of you also reached out to me offline. Been a lot of messages coming in on the Byrd Box this month, largely because of the Green Acres 50-50-50 giveaway. A lot of people want a shot at that $50 gift card, so they've been leaving messages. So I've been getting people reaching out asking, hey, how come my message hasn't been played? I left a message on the Byrd Box. I haven't heard it on a new episode. Look, all I can say is calm down, okay? Listeners, please keep your messages coming. I'm glad you're excited to hear yourself on the Fort Erie podcast. I'm excited to play your messages. I will play them. I will respond to them. But, it's like I don't necessarily get to it in the very next episode. Sometimes I save up messages and I group them together when they're on, sort of similar themes or similar ideas. So there's a little more of a discussion element to it. But, virtually every message that gets left for me will get played unless it's like really rude or belligerent or something like that. Then it goes in the trash. But anyway, if you see something interesting around town, if you heard something on this show you want to respond to, call in, give the Byrd Box a call, and let me know your opinion.
Have something you want to squawk about? Let the whole town know what's on your mind. Call the Byrd Box at 289-599-2973. That's 289-599-BYRD.
I started off today's episode by mentioning that I have a list pulled up in front of me of the various supplies you're supposed to send your kids back to school with. I find this list a bit strange because it specifically says these are the supplies you're supposed to send with a child going into kindergarten. And like one of the items on the list is number 2 pencils. I find that a bit strange. Most kids going into kindergarten are like 4 years old. Right? At that age, are they using number 2 pencils? I seem to remember at that age that we used those big fat primary pencils, like they're like a dark navy blue or bright red, like a fire truck. Do kids that age really have the dexterity to use a number 2 pencil? I don't know. It has other items on this list that I find strange, like lined paper and plastic folders to sort all your notes. I mean, how many notes are kids taking? Most of them can't even write, even if they have a number 2 pencil on hand, let alone to take notes, let alone enough notes to sort in a plastic folder. I find this list strange. It mentions sending them with their own pair of blunt-tipped scissors. And I get the need for blunt tips so that they're, safety first. But I feel like if you arm an entire room of kindergartners each with their own personal scissors. I mean, there's going to be a lot of haircuts going on when the teacher's back is turned. Mentioned sending them with a glue stick. I feel like that's going to get eaten, man. Even if it's not your kid, some other kid's going to eat it. I remember having like jars of paste out in those early grades, and there'd always be that one kid sitting there just scooping the paste in his mouth. So does every kid need their own glue stick? I don't know. That's strange to me. There are some normal things on this list, like get them a backpack, get them a lunch bag. I remember needing to have a smock at that age so I wouldn't get paint on my clothes, going with indoor shoes. That stuff seems pretty normal, but my suggestion is just wait for the first day of school. I'm sure whatever supplies your kid needs, they will come home with a list. Don't go crazy on buying them stuff that they're going to lose during the first week anyway.
This month in Fort Erie history.
Well, the month of August is almost over, but that's no reason why we can't do another round of this month in Fort Erie history. This one goes back to August of 1927 when the Prince of Wales, Edward VIII, came to visit Fort Erie. He and his brother, Prince George, visited Canada for the Diamond Jubilee of the Confederation, and Edward was the main speaker for a dedication of the newly constructed Peace Bridge between Fort Erie and Buffalo. Now, you might already know that construction of the original Peace Bridge began in 1925, and before there was a bridge, it was common practice for ferries to cart people and their things back and forth across the Niagara River. Anyway, the bridge took a couple years to build. It officially opened to the public in June of 1927, and then in August, the Prince of Wales was here in town for what I'm going to call a glorified ribbon cutting. Like, I know it sounds a bit condescending, but so far as I can tell, this entire dedication ceremony was a bit like when our local politicians cut a ribbon in front of a new burger joint. The bridge was already there, guys. It was already working, and he just showed up to do sort of an official dedication. An article here from the Buffalo News says that on August 7th, 1927, the span that linked the two countries was dedicated in a ceremony that featured high-ranking politicians. Among those in attendance were, from the United States, Vice President Charles Dawes, New York Governor Al Smith, and Buffalo Mayor Francis Xavier Schwab. From England, Edward, Prince of Wales, and Prince George. And from Canada, it leaves the Canadians nameless. It just says, from Canada, the Prime Minister, the Governor Central of Canada, and the Prime Minister of Ontario. According to literature about the event, 50 million persons in the United States and Canada heard the voice of the Prince of Wales over the radio when he spoke at the International Peace Bridge ceremony. So, of course, they didn't televise things back in 1927. It was all broadcast over the radio, and people were tuned in, I guess. So you'd expect a pretty compelling speech. I'll read you a part of what he said here. He said, "It gives me great pleasure to be present on the occasion of the formal dedication of this bridge, which commemorates the peace which has happily endured between the British Empire and the United States for more than a century." God, it's like even back then, politicians wasted taxpayers' money, on ceremony. That's all I can think reading this. I mean, he decided to travel abroad, he and his brother Prince George, when, an email or a Zoom call, or back then a telegram probably would have sufficed. But they did have some other stops on that tour, of course. Edward and George, they did a tour of the Niagara Rapids via streetcar. And the day before, August 6, 1927, the Prince of Wales was present to cut the ribbon at the official opening of Union Station in Toronto. So Union Station, Toronto, August 6th, Peace Bridge, Fort Erie, August 7th. Edward VIII, by the way, he was an interesting guy. I kind of looked into his background, not related at all to the town of Fort Erie, but just thought he was an interesting guy. He would eventually become the King of England in 1936 after his father, George V, died. But he'd only reigned for 11 months. It was pretty short-lived. He'd eventually abscond to the United States to marry a woman by the name of Wallis Simpson. Now, this woman was twice divorced. A divorcee at the time was not welcome in the royal family. Probably still the same thing today, but certainly the case back then. So he abdicated the throne for love. Kind of a nice story. I guess these two were, a bit like the 1930s equivalent of Harry and Meghan.
Fort Erie questions and answers based on the Facebook group by the same name.
Welcome to Fort Erie Questions and Answers. This is the part of the show where I go through the Facebook group by the same name and select any questions and answers that I thought were especially interesting or helpful. Let's start with this first question. Kristen asks, I'm wondering if there are any house/animal sitters in the area. And I'm guessing Kristen means by this pet sitters, somebody to look after your pets while you're away. A lady named Elaine commented about her own business. She posted a flyer for her business, which is called Bark at the Beach, and says she serves Crystal Beach, Ridgeway, and Fort Erie areas. Then Sherry asks, is there a place in Greater Fort Erie that I could get a couple of rolls of sod? 3 different answers I saw pop up here in the comments. Ace Hardware on Dominion, Homefront Landscape on Dominion, that's in Ridgeway where Patarax used to be, as well as Lawns and More on Highway 3. And I would tend to think of those 3, Lawns and More is probably your best bet, Sherry. SB asks, what is that constant banging? Is it fireworks? This post is a bit older. This is most people in the comments overwhelmingly gave the correct answer. What this user was hearing was the war reenactment, the siege of Fort Erie at the old fort. I talked about that going on a couple of episodes ago. What the original poster was hearing was cannon fire and musket fire. So again, most people, like dozens of people, got the correct answer in the comments, but I thought some of the wrong answers were kind of funny. One person here commented, I guess someone got drunk and went down to the fort and decided to shoot cannons at the boats going by in the lake. The U.S. is pissed. Somebody else said Americans took the fort again. Somebody else said flag ceremony at Buffalo Canoe Club. Is there a lot of banging at the flag ceremony? I don't know. I don't know about that one. And some other clueless person said concert at the zoo, like Safari Niagara. Yeah, there was a concert happening at Safari Niagara that weekend as well. But if you're hearing intermittent banging noises outside that resemble fireworks, I don't know why. I don't know how you could get that confused with a live concert at Safari Niagara. David asks, does anyone remember how long the Pizza Hut was in operation on Garrison Road beside the McDonald's? There were no consistent answers. It seems nobody remembers that little piece of Fort Erie history. One person commented, 7 minutes. Yeah, I guess it wasn't open very long. That was before my time in this town. Another person said no less than 1 year, but not more than 100 years. Very helpful. Another person said the most concise answer, whether it's accurate or not, I'm not sure. But another person said that Pizza Hut location was open between 1990 and 1996, so about 6 years. Seems no one knows the exact dates. I could look it up, but I don't think it really matters because things have a funny way of coming full circle. Because yet again, we do have a Pizza Hut here in town, just a different location. Takeout only, I believe, the one on Garrison, just a little farther up Garrison Road. It opened up during the pandemic. But that old location where Pizza Hut previously was in Fort Erie in the 1990s, which I believe became a shoe store at some point, that building has been abandoned since I moved here 9 years ago. It's a complete eyesore, and that is prime commercial space on Garrison Road. I don't know why that place hasn't been torn down and something built in its place. Then Beth asks, is Lee's Express closed? Now, this one shocked me because I love Lee's Express. My wife and I used to get, especially during the pandemic, we always got like the dinner for two from Lee's Express. Their debit machine was always broken. We always had to pay in cash. I had a funny feeling the debit machine was in fact not broken, but that's what we were always told. But this one shocked me because I went through the comments and everybody said yes. Everybody said, yes, Lee's Express has been closed. It's been closed for months now. I looked it up on Google and apparently Lee's Express is permanently closed. I didn't know that. I guess I really haven't ordered from them all that recently, but I really didn't want to just take Google's word for it. I took it a step farther and actually decided to give them a call. I'm going to play the results of that call for you right now.
Mailbox that has not been set up yet. Goodbye.
So there you go. I mean, it's they don't even have a greeting to say, hey, this is Lee's Express, leave a message. I guess it really is closed, and that bums me out. But hey, these are the things you can learn in the Fort Erie Questions and Answers Facebook group. Anyway, keep the great questions coming, Fort Erie. I'll keep reading them on the Fort Erie podcast.
Ranting and raving on the Fort Erie podcast.
I want to get something off my chest. I want to talk about tipping because tipping has got completely out of control. And let me say up front for this segment of ranting and raving, I don't have any issue with tipping on the surface. I don't mind tipping. Matter of fact, I like tipping and I like being able to adjust the amount I tip based on how good the service was that I received. And whenever this topic comes up, I hear people discussing tipping. I'll hear somebody say something like, well, we should do away with tipping altogether. You know, in Europe, they don't tip. Parts of Europe anyway, businesses, restaurants, they should be required to pay their employees, their servers, a living wage. It's not fair to pass on those costs to us as the consumer. But the truth is those costs would get passed on to us regardless. If tipping was suddenly banned and, restaurants, for example, started paying their servers a higher wage, well, the cost of the food you eat at that restaurant is going to go up as well to compensate. So as I say, I have no issue with tipping. My issue, what I want to rant about today is the amounts, like sort of the standards that are now expected. Like I've always been a standard 15% tipper. Okay. That's base level, 15%. And I've gone out before with a friend where they've offered to say, hey, it's on me tonight. Let me pick up the bill. And, I've seen people like leave a $5 tip on $100 meal. And I just find that so embarrassing. It's like, it should be at least 15%. I'll wait until they get in their car and leave, and I'll go back in and like apologize to the server and give them the difference, like give them a proper tip. And I say 15% is the base because I'm happy to tip 18 or 20% if I feel like I got exceptional service, if the person who served me went above and beyond. But now I'm being handed a debit machine to pay for my meal, for instance, where the options coming up on the screen are like 18, 20, 22, or 20, 22, 25, or 20, 25, 30, like much higher than sort of that standard 15%, what I consider sort of the cultural norm. And I get the rationale by just putting those three options in front of people. There are some users who are just going to take the debit machine and just for the sake of convenience, they'll pick one of those three higher amounts rather than entering their own custom amount. And sometimes there's like a degree of pressure that goes along with that. Like you feel obligated to pick one of those numbers because that's what's being suggested to you. A lot of people don't want to look cheap. But I'm trying to understand, like, since when did 20% or more become the new standard, like the new minimum, the new expectation? And the other thing that drives me crazy now is the types of businesses that are asking you to tip when they hand you the debit machine. I went into a store the other day. I won't say which store, but it was the type of store where it's very transactional. There's not somebody serving me at my table. There's not somebody making something fresh for me. It was the type of transaction where I point at the thing I want, the employee hands it to me, I pay, and that's the end of transaction. I'm in and out in under 2 minutes. And so I go to pay, and of course the debit machine pops up and asks me how much of a tip I want to leave, starting at 18%. Like, does anybody else feel obligated in those situations? You get handed this machine and you go, there's no reason why I should be tipping for this type of transaction. But at the same time, I feel like I have to. Like, usually I would just decline to tip in that instance, but in this case, the employee was standing like right there staring at me, holding the machine, and I'm fairly easily recognizable both for doing this podcast and for selling real estate. So I conceded. I just gave a tip because I didn't want, like, I don't want to be known around town as that cheap realtor who doesn't tip people. But like in my mind, I feel like it's reasonable to tip when I'm provided a service. Like if I get my hair cut, or I take a cab or get an Uber ride, if somebody, if a delivery driver brings pizza to my door, if I'm provided service like I'm served at a table at a restaurant, those seem like reasonable instances to tip. But now everyone with a debit machine is asking for tips, and I think it's getting a little bit silly. I'd be curious to know what you think, Fort Erie. Leave a message on the Byrd Box, 289-599-2973.
Community events coming up in Fort Erie.
I've got some community events pulled up in front of me here if you're looking for something to do between now and Labor Day weekend. For starters, today through September 1st, Fort Erie's Fantastic Gymnastics still has some availability for their day camp. They offer full days, half days, full weeks, and cater to all different ages of kids. Reasonable prices. You can contact Fort Erie's Fantastic Gymnastics for details. Then happening tomorrow, Wednesday, August the 23rd, if you have kids age 7 through 13 and they're into science, there's going to be a mad science workshop at the Crystal Ridge branch of the Fort Erie Public Library. That's happening from 2 until 3 p.m. This workshop is all about the science of sound. Also happening tomorrow, Wednesday, August 23rd, Nino Dambra Hair. They're celebrating 25 years in business. 101.1 More FM is going to be on scene. There's a barbecue happening between 2 and 4 p.m., a gift card giveaway, door prizes, and all that kind of stuff. They're inviting you to come out and meet their team and celebrate with them. Thursday, August the 24th. If you've not actually been out, every Thursday during the summer, the Crystal Beach Supper Market is going on. But if you haven't actually gone out to the Supper Market once this summer, hey, this is your invitation. Head down to the Waterfront Park between 4 and 9 p.m. for live music, food trucks, a licensed area for those of age to enjoy some wobbly pops. And of course, when the Supper Market wraps up at 9, you can always head on down to Derby and Erie, bars and restaurants there ready to serve you. The Ontario Planetarium will be doing a presentation for kids of all age on Friday, August the 25th. That's from 10:30 until 11 a.m. at Stevensville Memorial Hall. Saturday, August 26th, there's a whole bunch of stuff happening Saturday, August 26th. This first one, I don't know what this is. Worship in the Wild at Safari Niagara. No idea. It just says, bring your family and friends for an incredible day of worship and fun. Everyone will enjoy. It's a rain or shine event. Basically, you purchase regular admission to Safari Niagara and then join the worshipers inside. All it says is bring a folding chair. So who knows what's in store. Also happening that day, Saturday, August the 26th, the Redeemer Missions Golf Tournament is going on. That kicks off at 1:30 p.m. at Niagara National Golf and Country. And then later that day, August 26th, Brimstone Brewing is happy to welcome Kevin California back to their patio. He's going to be playing some original music. That gets going at 7 p.m. and admission is free. And then the Aurora Real Estate team is doing their annual Roar Fest. This is the fourth time they've done it, I believe, at Ferndale Park. It's a free event, starts at 4 p.m., includes live music, inflatables for the kids, activities, prizes, food trucks, and the feature film, once things get dark outside, will be the Super Mario Brothers movie on the jumbo screen. Actually saw that movie. It was pretty good. Chris Burkett, singer, songwriter, producer, composer, sound engineer. He's going to be back at Sessions on the River for another Sessions showcase. Again, that's happening Saturday, August 26th. It gets going at 8 p.m. It's one of these intimate sessions where you get to know the artist, free admission. It does say here in the description that he's a world-renowned record producer. Hey, no disrespect to this guy, but if you have to tell people you're world-renowned, you might not be. Sunday, August 27th, the Ridgeway Legion will be hosting Best Behavior. They'll be performing. There's food available, of course, cash bar. Everybody's welcome. Tuesday, August 29th, the Fort Erie Legion will be hosting Tuesday afternoon ladies darts. It says everyone who is interested in playing the ladies Tuesday afternoon darts, basically you come in to register on August 29th at 2 p.m. and the actual league gets going on Tuesday, September the 5th. Also happening Tuesday, August 29th, there's going to be a Taylor Swift dance party going on at the Fort Erie Public Library. That's the Centennial branch. It's a dance party for kids age 7+. That's happening from 6 until 7 p.m. That sounds fun, man. Taylor Swift dance party at the library. It says kids ages 7+. I wonder if they'd let a grown man almost in his 40s attend. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to try it. I won't risk it. Saturday, September 2nd, Friends of Crystal Beach will be hosting the annual End of Summer Parade. The parade commences at 1 o'clock and ends at the Crystal Chandelier, where the official burial ceremony will take place. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I've never attended the End of Summer Parade. This is like where they murder Old Man Summer. They like carry him around in a casket. There's like a burial ceremony. The whole thing just sounds morbid to me. I won't be attending this one, but if you do go, call the Byrd Box. Let me know what you thought. And just lastly, I'll mention if you're looking for something else to do, I know I had no new guest, no interview on today's new podcast episode, but hey, you can always catch up on past episodes, scroll through your podcast player, or visit theforteeriepodcast.com. I've had 15 different guests on for an interview over the previous 13 episodes, so there's lots of content there. Unless you're one of those diehard listeners, who tunes into the Fort Erie podcast for every new episode, you've certainly missed at least one interview over the past couple of months. So go back and catch up.
You're listening to the Fort Erie Podcast.
So that's the episode for today. That was number 65. It's in the books. Thank you for joining me for my first ever marathon episode. Quick reminder to get yourself into my August Green Acres 50-50-50 giveaway. One of the ways you can do that is just by calling the Byrd Box, leaving a message, squawk about anything you want, 289-599-BYRD. That's 289-599-2973. Follow me on social media. I'm at Buy with Brent everywhere. That's at BUY with Brent. Episode 66 will be on its way. I will have a guest to speak with on episode 66, so stay tuned for that. But that episode will not be coming out next week. There won't be another new episode of the Fort Erie Podcast until early in September. The best way to know when episode 66 is released is to subscribe either on iTunes or Spotify or whatever podcast player that you use. Anyway, that's That's it. Bye.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie Podcast with your host, Brent Jones. Never miss an episode. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or visit theforteriepodcast.com.